So, freedom. We love it. We tend to think that adding the word free to something automatically makes it better, whether it be free Wi-Fi, free bird, or free Willy. But there are some scary places to find the word free, say after the word gluten, or before the word Britney. Some people, however, think that freedom is always and everywhere a good thing. Take this quote: "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." That's from French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and it's not about his pervy bedroom practices, though looking at him, he probably had plenty. See, Rousseau believed that man was chained by society, and that it was man's duty to break those chains. C.S. Lewis called Rousseau the father of the totalitarians. We'll get to why in a minute, but the problem with the Rousseau quote is that it's not true. Man is not born free. From day one, we're chained to these people called parents who make every single decision for us: where we live, what we eat, and whether we get a face tattoo. We don't even get a vote, and that's a problem for Rousseau. He also said, man should not by any human power be forced to do what is against his will. For Rousseau, all these circumstances, being born in a family we didn't pick, in a town we didn't pick, following a religion we didn't pick, those are all chains holding us back from true freedom. It's all slavery. For him, kids that get taken to church are no different from kids that get taken to the Apple Watch factory. Rousseau saw the ideal man as the noble savage, a symbol of the innate goodness of someone not exposed to the corrupting influences of civilization. Think of Tarzan, the popular conception of the American Indians, or Rousseau's favorite example, children.
Rousseau suggested that children were born naturally good, and that the key to raising them was therefore always to prevent their corruption by society.
And if that sounds delusional to you, you won't be surprised to learn that Rousseau didn't raise any children. Notice I said raise because he did father 5 children, but he dropped them all off at an orphanage immediately upon their birth, presumably so he could focus on his writing.
In 1762, he wrote Emile, or On Education, perhaps the most successful book ever written about how to raise children.
Yes, the guy who pawned his kids off at birth wrote the most successful parenting book ever, which I'm sure is as reliable a guide as Sam Smith's Guide to Intermittent Fasting. But Rousseau's views about parenting and his views about politics are intertwined, and they're just as delusional. The truth is that individual freedom comes with responsibility. You can forfeit it in a moment, and the same is true of societies. If you want a historical example of Rousseau's influence on society,
he was, from beyond the grave, one of the heroes of the French Revolution.
That's right, he was basically the Charles Manson of revolutionary France. Sure, he didn't personally kill anyone, he just told people to take to the streets and get freaky. He probably also wrote some bad folk music. According to Edmund Burke, France was headed in a decent direction before the revolution. Of course, they had problems and challenges, various regions with different ethnic groups and cultural practices, some of which had experienced population booms. They also had some bad harvests, there were hard times and corruption, but it looked like the government was trying to form itself to the character of the people. Things looked promising, but the revolution put an end to that promise. The wretched scheme of your present masters is not to fit the Constitution to the people, but wholly to destroy conditions, to dissolve relations, to change the state of the nation, and to subvert property, in order to fit their country to their theory of a constitution. They had replaced French tradition with ideology, and it had some nasty results. Think Chaz, but with even more blood and syphilis, or a campus protest with even fewer snacks. We all know about the mass executions in France, but the revolutionaries also closed churches and persecuted clergy. They tried to replace Christianity with what they called the cult of reason, and later the cult of the supreme being. They even tried to abolish the 7-day week and replace it with a 10-day week. They would have succeeded, but they couldn't figure out where to put Taco Tuesday. The convenient thing is that worshiping an abstract concept gives you a lot of wiggle room. Reason and the supreme being didn't have anything particular to say about what the revolutionaries were doing. The people, though, did. When the Vendée region in western France rebelled against revolutionary conscription and anti-clerical policies, the government responded by killing tens of thousands of rebels and civilians, all in the name of liberty, equality, and fraternity. In short, the French Revolution was not just what was happening in America, but with berets and soft cheeses. It was something different. Instead of preserving the framework that could channel freedom, they tossed it all into the guillotine basket. In the original book, Burke had written, "Rage and frenzy will pull down more in half an hour than prudence, deliberation, and foresight can build up in 100 years. The errors and defects of old establishments are visible and palpable. It calls for little ability to point them out, and where absolute power is given, it requires but a word wholly to abolish the vice and the establishment together." They had destroyed the order that existed in order to replace it with something more in line with their ideology. Real embodied freedom wasn't the goal, it was the ideological version of freedom, which can basically mean whatever you want. The existing order didn't fit their utopian vision, so they destroyed it and tried to rebuild from scratch. But no matter what came before, and no matter the ideology of the revolutionaries, the results always looked the same. Like how no matter what big store in town closes, you always know that it's going to be replaced with a Spirit Halloween. Except in post-revolution societies, the barrels of severed limbs are real. Burke said that they should have tried to at once preserve and reform the order that existed, but they didn't want anything like that. That would take some restraint. Until you could make out practically that great work, a combination of opposing forces, a work of labor-long and endless praise, the utmost caution ought to have been used in the reduction of the royal power, which alone was capable of holding together the comparatively heterogeneous mass of your states. So Burke thought that making the government smaller was the wrong move in this case. They wanted political liberty, but Burke says they'd shown themselves unqualified for it. Here's why. I doubt much, very much indeed, whether France is at all ripe for liberty on any standard. Men are qualified for civil liberty in exact proportion to their disposition to put moral chains upon their own appetites, in proportion as their love to justice is above their rapacity, in proportion as their soundness and sobriety of understanding is above their vanity and presumption, in proportion as they are more disposed to listen to the counsels of the wise and good in preference to the flattery of knaves. Society cannot exist unless a controlling power upon will and appetite be placed somewhere, and the less of it there is within, the more there must be without. It is ordained in the eternal constitution of things that men of intemperate minds cannot be free. Their passions forge their fetters. This sentence the prevalent part of your countrymen execute on themselves. Burke wasn't an ideological liberal. He didn't think that liberty was right for every society. The French thought they had overthrown tyranny, but really they were just asking for more. This isn't to say that every individual who finds himself under a hard ruler has asked for it. Burke is saying that if you are asking for it, you're going to get it. We're not affirming the consequent. Of course, hard rule can go in a good direction or a bad one, but lack of self-control always leaves a void. The power that fills that void can be good or bad. A good ruler, if he finds himself ruling over a dissolute people, would be stupid to let it keep going, for the same reason that if your dog is growling at toddlers, you don't take the leash off. So no, freedom isn't for everyone. You earn it over time and you can forfeit it through your actions. Freedom is a responsibility to be earned and maintained on an individual and societal level. It's not about shattering every constraint, but carefully curating the right ones. Or on the other hand, you could have the societal equivalent of this.